Hey everybody, it's Greg here from White's Rides. I'm just reaching out to everybody. What we're doing here, we've started a YouTube channel. For some reason, there's a lot of people out there that want to hear what I got to say. Don't know why, but we're gonna use this platform for what it needs to be used for. And you guys hang in there with me. I'm usually the king of putting my foot in my mouth, and no one's here but me right now. My wife's usually around. She can go like that when I go to talking too much or saying the wrong things. So what I'm gonna do is just start off this. I've already posted a few things on YouTube, but we're gonna make this one here. Everybody needs to hear our story, know where we come from, and why we do what we do. Okay, and it starts off with God's got control of everything. Now, if you don't believe in God, you need to call me. I might can change your mind on that one. He's come into our life. He's been here from day one, and he's the reason why we do what we do. So, as I've told people, I've told many of you out there that while we were in the hospital, I made a lot of promises to God, and you got a lot of time on your hands when you're in the hospital, especially for 14 months. And with that, a lot of long nights, a lot of scary nights, a lot of scary days. You're living minute by minute, and you have nothing but time on your hands, and you might as well be praying when you're in that situation. So if you don't know what White's Rides is, White's Rides was created after the passing of our son. Wyatt passed away in 2020 at age 4. He had medulloblastoma. If you don't know what that is brain cancer. And the brain tumor was at the base of the skull. And where it was located at, the way that worked was as your body's sending fluid up your brain and back down your spinal cord, it was going through the tumor and it was circling back down to his spine. So by the time it was found, it not only was in his brain, but it had crystallized his spine. So they said his spine looked like somebody took a paintbrush and just painted it up and down. It lit up like that with so much cancer cells in there because it was taking particles of the brain tumor and it was just breaking it up and coming down his spine. So the way this works was Wyatt had never been sick, okay? He was a healthy little boy, and if you notice, we were older parents. I guess this kind of shows. Wyatt didn't come in our life. We were in our 40s. We had never had any kids, and one day, as I always tell everybody, Christy woke up pregnant, and that's how our story began. At age 3, he was diagnosed. He had no symptoms. The only symptom he had, he threw up one time a day. And this rocked on for 5 days. Now, one time a day he would throw up. Once he would throw up, he would go back to playing. Everything was great. There was no other side effects. He didn't stumble, didn't fall, didn't complain of a headache. And on day 5, it was kind of like one of those deals. We knew something had to be done. Christy was at work. I called her and said, hey, he just threw up again. Well, there's a guy that she works with. He said, if you want to know what's wrong with your little boy, you need to carry him to Children's Hospital. So prior to this, now, let me back up. We did call the pediatrician. They said, hey, there's a stomach bug going around. Don't bring them in. Just keep them hydrated. It'll pass. Well, that's what we'd been doing. So we get to Children's Hospital, and when we got there, I had the doctors convinced that it was a stomach bug because they drew all the blood. They drew everything. Everything came back. He was healthy. Nothing showed up. And the doctor says, he says, maybe it was a stomach bug. He says, just keep them hydrated. And for just a hot second, that doctor says, what was that? I said, what was what? He said, does his eye always do that? And we looked at him. His eye looked fine. There was no changes. And he had a real worried look on his face, the doctor did. And he says, would you mind staying the night? And I said, hey, we'll do whatever you want to do. This is our little boy. And so with that, we stayed the night. Well, later that night, Christy and Wyatt's laid in bed watching cartoons, and she looks down, and his eye, one of them straight, one has turned in. So I got the doctors, and they came in, and that's when it all hit the fan. The doctors looked, and they said, okay, we got a problem. And they knew at that point, they knew what it was. So we went from there to a CT. CT that night came back that he had a mass on the brain, and then that's when it all hit. So we went from that day into we basically had a very normal life. us being older parents, we're already established in life. Wyatt's life was going to be grand. He wasn't going to have to break his back, making a living the way I have. He was going to have a very good life. So we went from that to a train wreck that just wouldn't stop. So we went from that night, CT scan showing mass on the brain. We went from there the next morning, we were into a 6-hour brain surgery and just a nightmare that wouldn't end. After the surgery, we had some of the greatest doctors in the world. And he came out and he said, I want you to know that this is a conversation I don't get to have with most parents. He says, you do have a chance. He said, it's going to be a tough fight. He said, but you have a chance. He said, most parents in this situation, I don't have these conversations. So in other words, with them, it's already over with. And the thing with medulloblastoma, it is a type brain tumor that one day it's not there, the next day it is. It's not hereditary. They don't know where it comes from. It's just there. And so we went through nightmares. A lot of them I will not talk about because that's for us. The whole world doesn't need to know everything about you. So we went from, we went through chemo, several surgeries. He had a shunt put in his head to help with the brain pressure. Seizures. We've seen it all. It was a very terrifying time, and we went for 14 months. Now, during that time, we survived on nothing. I posted another video that said this, where my wife works, they were gracious enough to let her keep her job. A lot of companies don't do that, but she had to have her insurance, so she came in, she'd work, she'd cover her insurance, and with that, every 2 weeks we had $4. And, you can't live on that. I don't care how good of math you are. You can't stretch $4. And so, but every month our bills were paid, and that goes back to where God will provide. For a solid year, somebody paid our power bill. For a solid year, it was always zero. And so during that time, and I watched all these nurses up there, they're young girls, I was old enough to be their daddy. But they were members of every nonprofit. They were all busy, and they were doing great things. And I looked at Christy and I said, my thing here is, I've not been living right. And I said, watching these young girls, I said, I think about what I was doing when I was in my 20s. I was rowdy, and they were doing the right things, and I said, I got to change my ways. And one day I told her, I said, I have to apologize to everybody. I said, I was to a point in life. I've been, my past history was military and construction. I was a brick mason. So I was convinced there was more bad in the world than there was good. And I said, I've got to change my ways. I said, there's a lot of good people left in this world, and I'm seeing it. And so for 14 months, I kept telling her, we got to pay us forward. I don't know how, but we got to pay us forward. I said, it's a very humbling situation when people you've never met will send you $100. They give you $5, and even give you a meal card. The first time we received a meal card in the hospital, it was to Buffalo Wild Wings. I thought we won the lottery. We had 2 coolers in our room, and during that time, one cooler had bottles of water in it, the other cooler had canned goods, and I'm talking about garbage. So we didn't have any money. So, the hospital provides 1 meal a day for the family. So what we'd do, we'd split that meal. We'd cut it in half. She'd eat half, I'd eat the other half. Some days, one of us would be like, no, I'm not eating that garbage. You can have it. So, so we know what it's like to go through hard times. So after Wyatt had passed away, what we decided to do, basically it was a survival time. There was a family in our hometown, a little girl named Celia Grace, and she had MLD, which is a very rare genetic disease. Long story short, they were going to have to go to Italy for treatment. It was going to cost a lot of money, something the family was not prepared for, which nobody is. And Christy came to me. Wyatt only been gone for a few months, and she says, we got to do something. And I said, to be honest with you, I was a mental wreck. I'm talking about I was in a very dark place, and I said, I don't think I can do anything. But at the same time, all I hear was God saying, hey, big boy, you talk the talk, now you got to walk the walk. And I thought about all the prayers, all the promises, made a lot of promises in the hospital. I'm a man of my word. I'm a real man. I don't, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I do it. I don't care what it is. So at that point, I said, you know what, we'll put a car show on. Now, the reason we chose a car show, that's what we've always been doing. You know, I've been around car shows for 30 years. Wyatt loved going to car shows. To him, he'd rather go to a car show than a toy store, you know. And so what we done, we had 3 weeks time. I said, let's throw this car show together, and we'll try to help them that way. And didn't have a clue what we were doing, because going to a car show and putting one on is two different animals. If you've never put one on, you need to be very appreciative when you go to a car show and appreciate what people have done. So we put on this car show in 3 weeks time. That day we raised $23,000. And we gave every penny to the family. And at the end of that day, I looked across, I seen all the cars, people that came out, everybody knew who we were. And so I told her that day, I said, that's what we're going to do. We're going to put on car shows. And she's like, okay, you know. And all I could see was the words, Wyatt's Rides. I could see this right here. I could see it in my head clear as day. And that's when I decided that's what it's going to be called, Wyatt's Rides. And, you know, it took till later in life to realize that the way God works is your path is already laid out for you. Really, there is no coincidences. There is no such thing as luck. There's no such thing as bad luck. Everything we go through in life, it shapes us to who we are today. I don't care how bad your situation is or how good it is. You know, if you're living a good life, hey, good for you, but you better look out, you know. So the thing is, I can go all the way back in time. The more I think about things, the further back I look at the connections. You know, me and Christy, we knew each other's kids. We didn't get together till late in life. You know, we've been together for 15 years now. We worked together at Walmart when we were kids, teenagers. That was the first time we crossed paths. And never did ask her out. I guess I thought she was too pretty for me. And come to find out she wanted me to ask her out. I never would do it. I left high school, went to the military, come out of the military. We and her, we worked together again at a trailer plant, you know, side by side right there again. Still, you know, wasn't, you know, we didn't do anything, wasn't there. And then later in life, you know, I still remember her, she passed me going down the road, and I said, you know what, I thought one of these days I'm going to get my life right. That girl's going to be mine, you know. Still never did do anything. Then, so it took us a long time. And, of course, I met her again, saw her at a car show, and the story went from there, from the car show. So later on, I got to thinking, it was like God's going, you know, hey, boy, you know, how many times I got to cross your path before you realize you're supposed to be together? And now, by going through what we went through with Wyatt, by having Wyatt's Rides, I couldn't ask for a better partner. You know, there's not many women that would have stuck it out with me that could do what we do. We spend endless hours doing what we do, and we're fully dedicated. We still have a life to maintain. We still got bills to pay, but Wyatt's Rides has become our everything. You know, I told everybody when Wyatt was born, we built our whole life around him, and now here it is, we're still building our life around him. And so here it is later in life, you know, yeah, we've dedicated our life to God. We've dedicated our life to Wyatt's Rides. And it's going to be an interesting journey. You know, the reason I'm doing this right here for YouTube, I have 950,000 viewers. You know, that's almost 1 million people that is watching what I'm doing. And it's kind of an interesting thing to see why. Okay, so I feel like that's a platform that's been laid out for me, and I need to use it to the best of my ability. And there might be out of those 1 million people, there may be one person that I might can help. You know, so through this journey, however long this will last, I'm going to try to help others. And you know, with Wyatt's Rides, every penny that comes through our foundation, we turn around, we pay it forward. So what we do is we pay people's bills, personal bills. It might be your gas, might be your food, house payment, car payments. It's basically we weigh out the situation, see how long it is that you've been away from work, and you know, you can't be homeless and have a child fighting cancer. You know, you can't go home with no electricity. So that's where we step in because the mailbox never stops, and most of the world could care less what you're going through anyway. But that's where we're going to try to pick up some of the pieces for other people. And yeah, we still got a burden that we bear every day. And but now we're also taking on other people's burdens, and that's okay because I feel like this is what God's got laid out for us. We have these pamphlets here. If you've never received one of our pamphlets, hopefully we make it happen. I can't send out 1,000,000 of them because I don't have $1,000,000. But this is a pamphlet, has our story in it. If you've been to car shows, you've probably received one of these. It tells our whole story. We had these created because in the beginning, everybody wanted to know our story. And it was just too hard to tell. And I said, we got to have something on paper where you just hand it out and say, here you go. This is for you guys. So just hang in there with us. I don't know how long I should do these videos because guess what? I'm not into technology. As you can tell, I'm pretty much a caveman. So I shoot from the hip on everything I do. And but what we're going to do is if you're in need, and it might be a spiritual need, it might be a broken situation, and maybe I can help talk you through your situations and get you through some of your hard times. So what I'm going to do, this is the video here. This is one that tells our story. That way, if anybody says, oh, what is Wyatt's Rides? I hope that I've laid it out pretty good. Like I said, Wyatt passed away in 2020. And here we are. We have an annual car show at the end of every October. That's our biggest fundraiser of the year. And we have people come from all over the Southeast. It's great that people come out and support us and believe in what we're doing. And I like to call it Wyatt's Rides Family because Wyatt's Rides Family is growing. It's getting bigger and bigger. And who knows what the future holds for us. I think we've got some really big things coming. And I'm going to shoot some more videos and keep everybody aware of what's going on with us and keep you updated. And hopefully you guys can hang in there with us and help this foundation grow, and we can do some great things. So anyway, guys, this is Greg Spann, Wyatt's Rides, and it's been great talking to you. And hopefully I didn't say the wrong thing. If I did, it'll be all right. We'll get over it. So talk to you later. Appreciate you guys.